All right, today we're going to dive into a really powerful idea. It's a story that starts with a vision of an actual stone building and over hundreds of years morphs into something incredibly personal and honestly pretty profound.
Our whole story kicks off with this one, kind of mysterious image from the prophet Ezekiel. It sounds simple, right? Water flowing from a temple, but trust me, this single vision is the key that unlocks absolutely everything we're talking about today. Think of it as a metaphor for divine life itself, starting as just a trickle and growing into this totally unstoppable force.
So yeah, it all starts with this stunning prophetic vision written down centuries ago in the book of Ezekiel. And you have to remember, this was a vision of hope given in a time of pretty deep despair.
Now let's be super clear. When Ezekiel says the sanctuary, he means a real physical place, the temple in Jerusalem. For the people back then, this was a building made of stone and wood. It was seen as the one place on earth where God dwelt, the very source of all life and blessing.
And here's what's so wild about this vision. Ezekiel sees just a tiny trickle of water seeping out from under the temple door. But as it flows, it gets deeper and wider until it becomes this massive, uncrossable river. A river that has the power to literally change the world. Okay, so what could this supernatural river actually do? Well, the prophecy gets very specific about its incredible, life-altering effects. The river's number one job is to heal. It flows directly into the salt waters, which is a clear symbol for places of death and despair, like the Dead Sea, where basically nothing can live. But wherever this river goes, it transforms that death into fresh, teeming life. It's a complete supernatural reversal.
And the results? They're just astonishing. The sea becomes fresh and suddenly it's bursting with fish. Along the riverbanks, all kinds of fruit trees just spring up. And get this, these aren't normal trees. They produce new fruit every single month, and even their leaves are used for healing. It's a picture of total, unending restoration, and it all flows from that one sanctuary.
So for centuries, this was a prophecy about a building. But then, hundreds of years later, the whole idea of the temple goes through this radical, kind of shocking transformation. The story pivots from being about a place to being about a person.
Fast forward to the Gospel of John. Picture this. Jesus walks into that very same physical temple in Jerusalem, the one from Ezekiel's vision, and he sees it's being used as a marketplace. So he drives out the merchants, and in doing so, he establishes his authority over the building, calling it my Father's house.
And then, when he's challenged, he says something that just leaves everyone completely baffled. He says, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Now, to everyone listening, this sounded like an insane boast about the giant stone building they were all standing in.
But here is the crucial point, the big reveal. The source text makes it crystal clear he wasn't talking about the building at all. He was talking about the temple of his own body. In that moment, he was completely redefining the sanctuary, the dwelling place of God, as himself. This is where the entire idea pivots.
But wait, the story's not done. Not even close. This idea of the sanctuary takes one final, revolutionary step. It moves from one person to every person who believes. It becomes radically personal.
Decades later, St. Paul is writing a letter to the church in Corinth, and he makes this absolutely breathtaking statement. He looks at this community of ordinary believers and says, "Don't you know you are the temple of God? The dwelling place of God, that source of the life-giving river, isn't just a building anymore, or even just Christ alone. It's now within each individual."
So, let's just step back and recap this incredible journey. The whole idea of the sanctuary starts as a physical stone temple in Ezekiel's vision. Then, Jesus totally redefines it as his own body, the new source of life. And finally, Paul takes that same concept and applies it to every believer, whose soul becomes the dwelling place for God's Spirit. From stone to a single body to countless souls. Amazing, right?
Okay, so that's a fascinating theological journey, for sure. But so what? Why does any of this matter for us right here, right now? Well, the source material suggests that understanding this has some really practical, really personal implications.
This is where it all comes home. Just follow the logic for a second. If that world-changing, life-giving water flows from the sanctuary, and if you are now the sanctuary, well, then that means the source of that healing, fruitful flow is meant to come from right inside of you. And this brings us to a moment of, real reflection. The source asks us to think about this. What is the salt water in your life? What are those areas of bitterness or despair, sin or brokenness that really need to be touched and made fresh by this divine flow? And here's the follow-up question. Is that flow being blocked? Are there distractions or bad habits or just simple neglect that are kind of damming up that river of grace that's meant to flow freely from the sanctuary of your soul?
So the practical application here is pretty straightforward. The spiritual life, or what we call holiness, isn't about some big, scary, complicated external checklist. It's really about tending to this inner sanctuary, clearing out the debris, and making sure that this stream of life and grace and love can stay pure and flow without anything getting in its way.
And that leaves us with one final, really powerful question to carry with us. A question that ties this whole ancient journey right into our lives today. If you are the temple, what flows from you?